Morning. Hi. Okay. All right. This is what I've got for you today. So, I am going to do my best to encapsulate a lot of information very quickly through this video. I will be glazing over some of the more painful details for the sake of this video remaining up. For folks who are ready to proceed deeper into the research and the history of the U.S. Indian boarding schools, I will have resources linked for you below. So, the main resource that I want to direct people towards is the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. My dad has done a lot of work with them, and they are actively lobbying the government for the current Truth in Healing Commission legislation, which I will get to in my next video. I'm going to read for you the synopsis from their website. Beginning with the Indian Civilization Act Fund of March 3rd, 1819, and the Peace Policy of 1869, the United States, in concert and at the urging of several denominations of the Christian Church, adopted an Indian boarding school policy expressly intended to implement cultural genocide through the removal and reprogramming of American Indian and Alaska Native children to accomplish the systemic destruction of Native cultures and communities. The stated purpose of this policy was to, quote, kill the Indian and save the man. By 1926, nearly 83% of all Indian school-age children were attending boarding schools. The harms of Indian boarding schools. Between 1869 and the 1960s, hundreds of thousands of Native American children were removed from their homes and families and placed into boarding schools operated by the federal government and the churches. Though we do not know how many children were taken in total, by 1900 there were 20,000 children in Indian boarding schools, and by 1925 that number had more than tripled. The U.S. Native children that were voluntarily or forcibly removed from their homes, families, and communities during this time were taken to schools far away where they were punished for speaking their native language, banned from acting in any way that might be seen to represent traditional or cultural practices, stripped of any traditional clothing, hair, and personal belongings, and behaviors reflective of their native culture. They suffered physical, sexual, cultural, and spiritual abuse and neglect, and experienced treatment that in many ways constituted torture for speaking their native languages. Many children never returned home, and their fates have yet to be accounted for by the U.S. government. I will make sure that there is a photo of all of the known documented U.S. Indian boarding schools that the National Native American Boarding School Coalition has documented and chronicled. Investigations are taking place all across the country on both state and federal levels. And those investigations tie into the Truth in Healing legislation, which I will go into more detail in my next video. Some context: my grandmother was a survivor of Wrangell Institute, which was a Indian boarding school based out of Alaska. And some new information that I have talked about before in one of my previous videos, and it's that Alaska was actually the ground zero for Indian boarding schools. Not only was evidence found of institutions first opening in Alaska, but also that the methods of assimilation made infamous by Carlisle Indian Industrial School, often regarded as the nation's first off-reservation boarding school, began in Alaska too. Sheldon Jackson, a Presbyterian missionary with ties to Carlisle's eventual superintendent Richard Pratt, first came to the state on a mission in 1877. By 1878, he had founded Sitka Mission to assimilate Alaska Native boys, the precursor to Sheldon Jackson College, a year before Carlisle opened, according to the Alaska Native Knowledge Network. To make this very personal for me, I am from Sitka. My family, my dad's family, are all from Southeast Alaska. And the Presbyterian Church happens to be the same church that my grandfather forced me to go to growing up. I do believe that that is mostly a coincidence, but it's a twisted one as far as my life goes, in my opinion. But it's been heavy on my mind. Now, there's really no easy way for me to transition to this next portion here, because while I would love to say that, like Canada, all of our Indian boarding schools have closed, that is unfortunately not the case. There are a handful that are still open. Now, I am not talking about tribally run schools. There are tribally run schools that are operated by the tribes. Those are not the schools that I am talking about. I am talking about Chemawa in Oregon, which receives federal funding and has an extensive history of misappropriation of funds as well as abuse. I am talking about schools like St. Labre and St. Joseph's. Chemawa receives federal funding, whereas St. Labre and St. Joseph's are both privately owned and operated by the church. And their fundraising practices raise a lot of eyebrows. There's a pretty good chance that you may have received some of their marketing. I've talked about their very questionable fundraising practices before. So, as of right now, we have a lot of work cut out for us. There's part of the legislation that is making its way through right now has to do with granting the Truth in Healing Commission the power of subpoena, which would be able to allow them to compel records from government agencies, but also private entities such as churches. That is going to be a huge component to the research and the investigations going forward. There is a lot of information that's going to be coming out. It's going to be a lot of information coming from a lot of directions. For all the comments that I'm getting from folks who would love to know about how to get started helping, that is music to my ears. You can get ahead by checking out the resources that I have linked on my website under the Indian Boarding Schools tab. There's going to be a lot of resources, history, videos, a podcast, as well as action items that I have right now. There will likely be more action items coming very soon, and I will make sure to let you guys all know via the newsletter, because that's where I put time-sensitive information when that comes. Don't worry, I will also be making videos for everyone as well, but the newsletter gets to folks before anyone else. So, a reminder to sign up for that. It is free to read, it is free to sign up, and we have a good time over there. Okay, I think I'm going to leave this video here. I've covered the very basics. The idea here is for you to take what you've learned from this video and to keep going with the resources that I have provided for you guys. I will see you guys next time. I'm going to go have some coffee. Bye.